Redshift here, doing my part to shift perceptions out of the pink and into the red. Okay, so I wanted to read a bunch of quotes and parts of this book, The Tao of Each One, stuff I did not read in the last video about Empty Force. First, I'm going to read the precepts of Shaolin under the Shaolin Ethical Legacy section of the book, but then most of the rest of it's going to be more related to itself. This is just sort of a little pre-addendum type of thing. Shaolin ethics. Number 1, respect the master, honor the moral code, and love the fellow disciples. Number 2, train Kung Fu, in other words, Kung Fu, devotedly and build up a strong, healthy body. Number 3, forbidden to molest or rape, forbidden to go astray. Number 4, forbidden to show off the arts nor to offend the seniors. Number 5, forbidden to laugh for no reason, nor to tell lies. Number 6, forbidden to bully those under you, nor to take advantage of high office for settling personal differences. 7, forbidden to quarrel loudly, waving the hands wildly. 8, forbidden to kick about aimlessly, to stand at fighting stances, nor to make accusations against others noisily. 9, forbidden to spread false rumors, nor to boast of strength and oppress the weak. Number 10, forbidden to be greedy, neither to rob nor steal others' property. Number 10, be humble and soft-spoken, be unbashful in seeking advice for knowledge. Number 12, develop self-control, be cooperative and helpful. And that was under the Shaolin ethics. And then under forbidden acts is forbidden to molest or rape, forbidden to rob another person's wife, nor to force someone into marriage, forbidden to bully the kind and gentle people, forbidden to rob, forbidden to take advantage of intoxication to do evil, forbidden to torture nor to be cruel, forbidden to be involved in improper activities, forbidden to show disrespect to the elders, forbidden to rebel against the master, forbidden to associate with villains. And then under obligations you have obliged to eliminate the cruel and the villainous, obliged to protect the lonely and the oppressed, obliged to be chivalrous and generous, obliged to right wrongs courageously, obliged to spread Shaolin teachings and Kung Fu, obliged to learn the art for self-defense and to overcome calamity, obliged to pass on the art unselfishly to selected good disciples. So this is quite good. Some of this is very obvious, right? Like don't molest or rape. But on the other hand, guys had way higher testosterone back then, and they were much healthier back then as well, and they exercised a lot, so they had a ton of energy. They didn't masturbate, and they weren't allowed to have sex before marriage back then. So, just like in early, not even early days of America, even all the way back in as early as like the 50s and stuff, people didn't masturbate and didn't have sex before marriage. So, the temptation to rape was obviously way bigger, right? Even though their moral character is way higher, so they didn't typically, but, so I guess it does need to be said. But, yeah, see, look at that. Forbidden to force someone into marriage. Look at that. See, like, this whole feminist idea that, women are being forced into marriage by guys and it was oppression to women, bullshit, right? Like, look at this, it says right there, you're not allowed to force someone into marriage. Although the very fact that they had to say it does indicate that it probably did happen. But my point is, it wasn't happening like all over the place. It wasn't like common practice to force women into marriage or something, obviously. Forbidden to bully the kind and gentle people. That's good. Forbidden to rob. Obviously, you don't want to take advantage of your strength in an evil way. Forbidden to torture, nor to be cruel. That's in a sense it's obvious, but in another sense, I don't know. Like I kind of feel like today things are so bad that we really do need to capture all the people who are part of Skull and Bones and torture them to get information so that we can find out who all the other scumbags are and execute them all. So I don't know about this like not torturing thing. I mean, definitely it's good not to torture enemies for no reason, but if you have to get information from a bad person and torture is the only way, then yeah, you should do it. I mean, even the US government does it and everybody lets the US government do it. So, how is what I'm saying here any more radical than allowing the US government to waterboard people? Especially considering I'm saying let's capture and torture the scumbags that are starting all these genocidal wars and robbing people of trillions of dollars and enslaving the whole human race. Whereas what's the government's justification? Let's torture, let's waterboard, and waterboarding is torture. If you don't believe me, watch that video of, I think it's a video. Christopher Hitchens talks about how he didn't think it was waterboarding, and then he let it be done to him because, he thought he'd be able to handle it. He thought it wasn't torture. He thought, I'm a person of integrity or whatever. Like, I don't think it's torture, so why shouldn't I prove that it's not torture by undergoing it myself? So he underwent it, and it didn't last very long. I can't remember, a minute or 30 seconds or just a couple of minutes, whatever. It was real quick, and it was over. And then he was like, "Oh my God, I was so wrong. That absolutely is torture." So and what's the government's excuse for using torture against people? It does torture against like so-called Islamic extremists, but why are there Islamic extremists? Because we're in their countries killing their people by the millions. That's why. If we weren't waging their wars against their countries and forcing them onto the petrodollar, which robs them and the whole rest of the world, and if we weren't, exporting feminism and all this crap to their countries, destroying their culture and their morality, if we weren't doing all this evil shit, robbing, killing, and degenerating them, then they wouldn't be extremists. I mean, it's ridiculous. So the extremism is, and the excuse for the torture, there's no excuse for us torturing people, the U.S. government torturing people, because, we're only doing it because of the backlash against what we were doing to them unjustly first. We started the injustice first by oppressing them. You know what I mean? So I don't know about not torturing, but you definitely shouldn't torture your enemies for no reason, for fun or something. But if you have to torture like an enemy commander to get important information from him, and you're the defensive side, you're not attacking like America is, but you're the defensive side, and you're the ones being oppressed by them, then yeah, capturing your commander and torturing him to give you information is good. Well, not good, but necessary, you know what I mean, in my opinion. But I think this is a good one also. Forbidden to associate with villains. Yeah, you shouldn't be hanging out with bad people. If you're a good person, there's no excuse for hanging out with bad people. That reflects badly on you. If you're supposedly a good person, but you hang out with bad people, that really speaks very badly of you. Not just in terms of like reputation, but I mean genuinely, like why would you hang out with bad people if you're a good person? Their words and their actions and everything that they do should just offend you and should just drive you away. You should have no interest in hanging out with them, much less wanting to hang out with them. I mean, in a sense, this is super obvious, right? But even if you think, oh, well, I can keep it separate or whatever, not let their bad actions affect me. Well, no, not really. They will start to rub off on you, and then you will get worse by hanging out with bad people. Let's see here. What else? I really like this one. Forbidden to bully those under you, nor to take advantage of high office for settling personal difference. Right? Like a lot of people do that. They will use high office to settle personal differences. This is a massive lack of integrity, corruption of an authority position or whatever, and that shit inevitably happens, which is why there should be no authority positions, no leadership positions, etc. Forbidden to quarrel loudly, waving the hands wildly. That also makes a lot of sense because you don't want people losing their temper in an argument. An argument should be as calm as possible and as rational as possible. You know what I mean? Because once you start yelling and getting real, like moving your hands about and stuff, then it's like you're not far from shoving, and shoving's not far from, a fist fight. You know what I mean? This one's also pretty good. Be humble and soft-spoken, right? Like, just because you have strength because you practice martial arts doesn't mean you should be acting like a tough guy. You know what I mean? It's much better to be humble and soft-spoken. Then other people who aren't as well trained as you aren't going to feel intimidated, aren't going to try to prove that they're tough by trying to get you to prove how tough you are, and then you're going to avoid a lot of fights because other people aren't going to try to pick a fight with you because of you being so humble and soft-spoken. So then they're not going to feel threatened by you, even though they know that you know martial arts. You see? So there's actually a lot of good principles here. So that was the first little thing that I wanted to read. The rest of it was a bunch of different sections that are all kind of related and stuff. Some words by Wang Xiangzhai, writings by him, some stuff about the early history of the art and stuff. It says Qing Dynasty. During the Qing Dynasty, the brothers Dai Bang Bang and Dai Long Bang became the favored disciples of Cao Ji Wu, inheriting the mantle of direct lineage succession. Then a certain Li Luo Neng from Hebei province heard rumors about the extremely high level of skill of Dai Long Bang had developed and went to study with him. At first, Dai Longbang apparently was quite stingy with his information, which only changed after Dai's mother intervened. Quote, at a birthday party for Dai's mother, Li so impressed her that she berated her son for being so niggardly in his teaching. After that, Dai taught Li the whole art, and Li mastered it at the age of 47. Unquote. So, I guess he's pretty stingy with teaching, the whole art form, the whole martial art to Li. And only after his mother, castigated him, upbraided him for being so stingy with the art did he, pass it on the whole thing to Li, and then Li mastered it. As a result, and by the way, it said, this regarding that whole stinginess thing, like martial arts, this is before guns and stuff. This is like the Qing dynasty was 1644 to 1912. So that was a long time ago. I don't even know that they had guns in China at that time, or if they did, probably most people didn't have guns. So and even if they did have guns back then, I don't think they did. But even if they did, throughout history, martial arts, at least in China, have been a closely guarded secret, because that was the way of defending yourself. Since there were no guns, it was basically combat was either with hand to hand or with swords or something like that. That was how you did fighting, So to teach martial arts willy-nilly to people was thought to be a dangerous thing, because you don't want these dangerous techniques that are for protecting your family or your city or your region or whatever. You don't want those techniques getting out to bad people who are going to use those techniques against you. You see, so you can be they could be quite stingy with the techniques, because they don't know if they could trust the other people or whatever. And then it says, as a result of his training with Dai Longbang, Li Luoning became so skillful and powerful that he was called Divine Fist. His skill and speed were so great that his opponents never had a chance to come close to him. When challenged, he went forward easily, put out his hand, and achieved his purpose. After he had completed his studies with Dai Longbang, Li Luoning went home to the province of Hebei, concentrating on training his disciples, with the result that his Henan branch of Xing Yichuan became famous throughout China. The most accomplished student of Li Luoning was a man called Guo Yunshen, who became, if possible, even more famous than his teacher for his overwhelming power. The stories vary, but it appears Guo killed at least one man, and possibly several others who came to challenge him. As a result, he spent 3 years in prison, restricted by fetters. One would think this would have been a severe impediment to his practice, but actually, it proved a blessing in disguise. Restricted from any movement, Guo developed Xing Yichuan's deepest essence, the discharge of extremely powerful and explosive force from a still posture to new heights of sophistication. So powerful was Guo's discharge of energy that some called him Divine Crushing Hand, while others, less favorably inclined to him but equally impressed, called him Demon Hand. Apparently, however, prison did teach Guo that it is wiser not to kill his opponents. After his release, the story goes, Guo was always careful to place his left hand on his opponent's body before issuing with his famous right hand. The left hand helped absorb the energy of his right, thus preventing serious injury to his opponent. Needless to say, with the appearance of Guo Yunshen on the martial arts scene, the fame of Xing Yichuan as the ultimate boxing art spread far and wide throughout China. And then it says, Guo Yunshen's summary of Xing Yichuan. Quote, Xing Yi is similar to Taoist meditation. Both have the goal of emptiness. But where we go from inaction to action, the Taoists go from action to inaction. We borrow from the Taoists 3 changes. Number 1, Jing, or sexual energy, sperm, to Qi. Number 2, Qi to spirit. And 3, spirit to emptiness. The way to mysterious energy is through the obvious and the concealed energies. To get obvious, you must be centered and balanced. Through this energy, sperm is worked into qi, which changes the bones. At birth, our bodies are strong, but later they decline. Da Mo developed the teaching. Da Mo is Bodhidharma, the founder of Zen, renowned as an arahant, or famed as an arahant. I guess the Buddha wasn't around at that time to verify his attainment, but at birth, our bodies are strong, but later they decline. Damo developed a teaching to change the sinews and to wash the bone marrow. He believed that this would permit the body to return to its prenatal state. In the Song dynasty, 960 AD to 1279 AD, Yu Fei added to Damo's doctrine that of changing the bones. The 5 fowl exercise and 8-part exercise reflected these teachings. After concerted practice, the dispersed qi is concentrated at the navel and all parts of the body are coordinated. This is called little heaven. Then it goes on to talk about the big heaven, concealed energy, and yeah, I guess I'll read that part too. The next stage is concealed energy. It is free, relaxed, soft, and natural. However, do not be misled by the word soft. It is not soft like grass. Rather, it is elastic. This stage deals with changing chi into spirit and concomitantly changing the sinews. It is called big heaven. In boxing, when your right hand goes forward, the left hand pulls back as though it were tearing cotton or drawing a bow. This is done slowly, not abruptly. When your two hands go forward, it is like pulling a cart. That is, just as your legs, not your hands, move the cart, it is your legs, not your hands, that impart strength to your boxing. The rear foot holds strength as though you're going to leap off of it across a ditch. The highest stage grows from the second. It is called mysterious, the result of marrow washing. It is soft and uses no strength. It lets you move more easily because the energy is concentrated, and this energy merges you with emptiness. The Tao, in which, quote, boxing is non-boxing is boxing, unquote. The energy derived is different from actual strength. Although the actions taken are the same, the energy stays inside, controlled by the mind. This is the acme of Xing Yi, the best of alchemy, boxing, and the Tao. That is not Western alchemy of turning metal lead into gold, but Taoist alchemy of trying to seek immortality by changing Jing, that is sexual energy, into qi into Shen, and Shen into emptiness or the Tao. And this is supposedly how you attain physical immortality, which was the goal of the ancient Taoists. And it has to do with creating this immortal infant in your body as well. Although I mainly know about that from Falun Gong, Falun Dafa. Not so much from reading actual stuff on Taoism. But the little and big heaven, I believe, is that's usually referred. That's the big heaven and little heaven they're talking about. There are the microcosmic orbit of the energy going up your spine and then down the front of your body and then back into your spine in a loop. And the big heaven is the macrocosmic orbit of that circuit expanding and then going out to your hands, like out to your fingertips and then back up and then meeting up with the spine and then going down and then back out the hands and then doing the same with your legs. It goes like I think out through the microcosmic orbit and the macro, outside of the legs and then up the insides of the legs and then up the spine and then down again and then out again. So that's the big and small macrocosmic orbits there that they were talking about. And then let's see here. What's the next thing I wanted to read here? Yada, 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 yada. Oh, yeah, the apprenticeship. Wang Xiangzhai was born in 1885 in Shenxian district of Hebei province. He was given the name of Ni Li Bao, or later named Yu Seng, and yet later in life adopted the name Wang Xiangzhai. As a small boy, Wang Xiangzhai developed a severe case of asthma which stunted his growth and left him in poor health. When he was 8 years old, in order to remedy his illness and help him regain his health and strength, his father made him take up the practice of Xingyi Chuan with his elder uncle, the famous Guo Yunshen, in the neighboring village of Mahjong. And again, Guo Yunshen is the one I was talking about earlier, the one who killed one or more people and was imprisoned because of it. Which is really interesting because Guo Yunshen, having been such a, I don't know what you would call that, like callous. I mean, like, who is that callous? Like, I guess a lot of guys back then were that callous, but it really is interesting that Wang Xiangzhai was such a gentle person. I don't think he hurt anybody who he fought against, who he did matches with. But Guo Yunshen was quite different, which is interesting that they're related, that they're so different. But anyway, so yeah, his uncle was the famous Guo Yunshen. Actually, the old master did not really want to take on young Wang Xiangzhai as his apprentice because he was old and suffered from sickness in the legs, such that he could barely walk anymore. But two things changed his mind. First, his own son and heir to the lineage had an accident. He fell from a horse and died. Also, Wang Xiangzhai had come with excellent recommendations from another relative. Thus, Guo Yunshen relented and agreed to accept Wang Xiangzhai as his live-in student. It was not long before a profound rapport developed between the two. Young Wang Xiangzhai was extremely intelligent in his perception and very diligent in his practice. This earned him the respect and affection of his elder uncle, who recognized in his nephew the qualities necessary for him to become a worthy successor in the lineage of transmission of his art. As Wang Xiangzhai expressed it later in life, his uncle felt that if the student is not the right person, he cannot learn, and the right person cannot teach him. In other words, progress requires the right combination of student, teacher, and art. So it's got to be, the art's got to be good or whatever, I think is what that means, and the teacher has to be good, obviously, and the student has to be, someone of aptitude, someone with the potential to become someone who can absorb everything that his good teacher has to teach him. Someone with the requisite talent, right? But in his nephew, Guo found the right student. Thus, as Wang Xiangzhai later wrote himself, his uncle, from time to time, would show me his specialties and advised me to show his art greater respect and not follow the habits of my peers. The habits of my peers, Wang Xiangzhai is talking about, refers to the preoccupation of martial artists with the superficial intricacies of form, as opposed to the deep simplicity of essence, that is, practicing Zhangzhuang, standing stake meditation, unmoving meditation, as you stand and hold an invisible ball in front of you. Again, in Wang Xiangzhai's own words, quote, when Mr. Guo taught Xing Yichuan, the fundamental practice was Zhangzhuang, or standing meditation. This was the essence of his teaching, unquote. The reader may recall that this technique of standing Zen meditation, the historical basis and essence of Xing Yichuan, was developed to new heights of achievement by Guo Yunshen during his prison years, when he was shackled and forcibly immobilized. Young Wang Xiangzhai took his uncle's teachings seriously, and within a few years of study and practice, he had not only regained his health, but also understood and internalized Xing Yichuan's essence. Thus he developed into a formidable boxer while still only in his teens. It must have been a source of bittersweet pride for Guo Yunshen to see his nephew growing and maturing in the art, even as his own advancing age increasingly began to take its toll on him. Already in his mid-70s, he soon no longer had the strength to even stand up while practicing Tui Shuo, or pushing hands, with Wang Xiangzhai. Yet nothing was allowed to intervene in the transmission of the art, and they continued their pushing practice with Guo sitting on the northern bed, a term denoting a little brick bench that was part of the hearth in which Wang Xiangzhai always kept a fire going to keep his teacher warm and comfortable. As Guo's health continued to decline over the next 5 to 6 years, Wang Xiangzhai began to take care of his uncle day and night as if he were his own son, always being there when needed. Thus an extraordinary closeness developed between the two, and Guo continued to instruct Wang Xiangzhai. I said Guo, but it's one of those words that's like the K can be pronounced as a K or a G, so it's referring to Guo Yunshen, but he spelled it right here as Guo instead of Guo. Guo continued to instruct Wang Xiangzhai verbally until his dying day. Finally, when the time came in 1898, Master Guo reportedly said on his deathbed that among his many disciples, Wang Xiangzhai was the only one who could inherit his legacy and carry it forward. The skeptic might argue that after only 5 years of training as a child and being only 13 years old, Wang Xiangzhai could hardly have progressed enough to have gotten so good as to be able to merit the distinction of inheriting the lineage of transmission. But old Master Guo Yunshen recognized the innate genius and self-discipline of Wang Xiangzhai. He was confident that the rigorous training he exacted of him would in time produce the desired results and make him a worthy successor to the secrets of his arts. Just how demanding he was of Wang Xiangzhai in his training is illustrated in this story. The first thing young Wang Xiangzhai was to do upon getting up in the morning was to practice his Zhangzhuang standing meditation. When Guo Yunshen would get up later, the first thing he would do was to examine the mark of dampness around the place where Wang Xiangzhai was standing. If the floor was not sufficiently wet from perspiration, Wang Xiangzhai would have to stand again until the old master was satisfied that the floor was wet enough. And I think I, said that in my last video, but I just want to read that whole thing. Thought you might find it interesting. You kind of get a better flavor for it if I actually read the whole thing. Let's see here. Yada, 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 yada. Okay, I'll read this. When the captain in charge heard about the incident, in 1907, when he's 22 years old, Wang Xiangzhai left his parents' home and village under disharmonious circumstances. He had been befriended by a young relative with whom he had gotten into the bad habit of gambling. Disliking the punishment his mother meted out to him, he and his relative ran away to Beijing to make a living. In Beijing, Wang Xiangzhai joined the army as a cook's helper with the job of cutting wood and carrying water. Once, as he was carrying water, a soldier, not knowing Wang Xiangzhai's martial arts ability, tried to trip him, but instead wound up on the ground himself, amazing the rest of the soldiers. When the captain in charge heard about the incident, he summoned Wang Xiangzhai for an explanation. Wang Xiangzhai explained that he had studied Xing Yichuan with the famous Guo Yunshen. This pleased the captain, himself a martial arts champion, so much that he gave Wang Xiangzhai his daughter as a wife and gave him a new job as martial arts instructor to the soldiers. With his improved position, Wang Xiangzhai had the time to improve his education and study things besides the martial arts. He turned out to be equally gifted in poetry and calligraphy as in the martial arts. His wife was also an avid martial arts practitioner, and studying Xing Yichuan with her husband, also became highly skilled in the art. She also gave birth to their 3 children, 2 boys and a girl. The second daughter, Wang Yufang, is still alive today, teaching her father's art of Zhanzhuang, standing meditation, in Beijing. But of course, his book came out like 25 years ago or something, so she's probably dead now, but that's what it says in the book. The classics always claim that if studied in their true essence, the practice of the martial arts will result in the refinement of one's personality and character. As illustrated in the following story, this is certainly the case with Wang Xiangzhai, who always was a perfect gentleman and paid the proper respect in dealing with his peers and elders. In 1913, when he was 28, and his reputation as a martial artist already well established in Beijing, a prominent politician invited Wang Xiangzhai to a banquet that would be attended by the prominent martial arts instructor, Mr. Li Ruidong. When Mr. Li Ruidong arrived, Wang Xiangzhai went over to meet him and introduce himself. When they shook hands, it appeared to all around as if they were just greeting each other, but in reality they were testing each other's inner strength. It turned out Mr. Li could not match Wang Xiangzhai's inner strength. His leg became soft and buckled, causing him to have to kneel down. Wang Xiangzhai, observing this, immediately relented and pulled him up, thus saving him from embarrassment and loss of face, that is, loss of reputation. Smiling in his appreciation, the older gentleman simply turned and left. The audience was highly disappointed and surprised at this behavior and pressed Wang Xiangzhai for an explanation, asking, "This guy who came to visit you is a very big name in the martial arts. Nobody can compete with him. Why would he just touch you and leave laughing without doing anything?" In reply, Wang Xiangzhai said, For those who have self-realized as martial artists, when they just touch, they know each other's skill and ability. If you really know, there's no need to fight it out." So that shows his character, And then I also want to read this part about G.T. Fu, Master Xin Yichuan, who, not to be confused with Xing Yichuan, even though Xin Yichuan and Xing Yichuan are related, or at least historically. So I wanted to read this because G.T. Fu is one of 2 people ever to soundly defeat Wang Xiangzhai after he'd already achieved mastery. It says, next Wang Xiangzhai, and this is, I'm skipping like a page or 2 later, it says, next Wang Xiangzhai went to Hunan, where he met the great Xin Yichuan Grandmaster G.T. Fu. Mr. G was over 50 years old at the time and considered to be quite an eccentric, because he never talked to anyone about his art, and for that matter, never talked much to anybody about anything. Wang Xiangzhai requested a match, and Mr. G.T. Fu obliged. They fought 10 rounds, and Wang Xiangzhai was defeated soundly, all 10 rounds. He had finally met his match. But not wanting to give up yet, Wang Xiangzhai then asked, "Can I match you in weapons?" At this, Mr. G.T. Fu laughed and said, "Weapons are nothing more than an extension of the human hand. If I can defeat you with my hands, I can defeat you with weapons." But again, he obliged Wang Xiangzhai, and they fought another 10 rounds with weapons. Again, as Mr. G.T. Fu predicted, Wang Xiangzhai was soundly defeated all 10 rounds. After that, humbled and embarrassed, Wang Xiangzhai made ready to pack his bags and leave. Seeing this, the eccentric Mr. G.T. Fu said, "You want to come back in 3 years? Is that what you want? I'm old now and don't have that many years left. You might as well stay a little longer. Don't be embarrassed, because I have a lot of experience. Throughout my life, I've met a lot of good, accomplished people, but I haven't met anyone as good as you are. Now why don't you stay and let us make friends?" At that invitation, Wang Xiangzhai paid his respects and stayed with Mr. G.T. Fu for over a year, and during that time he made enormous progress. When the time came to say goodbye, Mr. G.T. Fu accompanied Wang Xiangzhai to the border and left him with these words. As far as your accomplishments south of the river are concerned, I dare not say. But north of the river, I don't think anyone can harm you. I don't think anyone can hurt you. They bade farewell with tears in their eyes. Wang Xiangzai then crossed the Yangtze River into southern China, where he again encountered and engaged numerous martial arts specialists in discussion and competition. Among those he engaged in successful contests were Mr. Fang Shizhong in Zhejiang province, who was famed for his devastating mastery of Wu Ji Liao Shu, 5-hand striking skills, and Mr. Liu Pi Xiang from Xi'an, who had mysterious leg attack skills. So I wanted to read that part. And then another part I wanted to read. Let's see here. He says, It says, Wang Xiangzhai taught that the acme of martial arts ability lies in the paradox that only the movement of energy cultivated in stillness can produce stillness of mind and physical movement. Can produce stillness and physical movement, right? It says, lies in the only the movement cultivated in stillness can produce stillness and physical movement. Right, yeah, like they cultivate stillness to gain mastery of the body so that they'll be able to move properly, right? Second major impediment to the true renaissance of the martial arts in China, Wang Xiangzhai argued, was the traditional method of transmission. That was a major impediment to, having a true renaissance of martial arts in China. He says, in particular, he issued a blistering critique of the traditional aspects of secrecy and selectivity in transmission, as well as of the traditional authoritarian teacher-student relationship. Wang Xiangzhai noted that secrecy and selectivity in transmission lead to excessive and neurotic competition, and thereby to lack of cooperative research between differing schools of martial arts. He therefore regarded these practices of the hoarding of secrets and their carefully selected transmission by the master to one or two students, usually in the family lineage, as one of the main contributing factors in the decline and impoverishment of the Chinese martial arts. As he wrote in his first preface to his book, The True Course of Each One, quote, if people have these kinds of thoughts of secrecy, there is no more fortune left in mankind. That is why in our country we have so many weaklings, and we cannot compare with other countries because of the sickness that exists. In other words, knowledge should not be kept a secret because it belongs to all mankind. Knowledge does not belong to any one country or nation or group, because all knowledge exists under the sun, and anything under the sun cannot be kept a secret. I take up to teach martial arts as a profession. I have never refused anyone who came to study with me. Anyone who has a desire to learn, I will teach. What I will teach with all my might. Whenever asked, I will answer, and I will answer to the fullest. As to the other target of his criticism, the traditional authoritarian master-disciple relationship, Wang Xiangzhai was no less scathing in his indictment. Like the secrecy issue, he pinpointed it as one of the major contributing factors to the sorry state of affairs that he perceived in the decline of the martial arts. Quote, this awful, ugly tradition, unquote. He wrote, quote, this awful, ugly tradition produces basically masters and slaves. It sets up a neurotic competitive dynamic between students of differing systems that my teacher is better than yours is not as good as mine, while at the same time creating an exploitative relationship between teacher and student. Therefore, Wang Xiangzhai wrote, if we continue with this kind of system, the way, or Tao, of martial arts will never become great. It is only when someone has something to teach and someone wants to learn that the proper situation for teaching exists. Kowtowing 3,000 times and calling the teacher Great Sifu does not make him a teacher, nor does it make the student a student, for that really has nothing to do with what you're teaching. Knowledge is the most sacred thing in the universe. That is the reason I so forcefully emphasize breaking down the master-disciple relationship. It is understandable that Wang Xiangzhai's writings became extremely controversial. On the one hand, they were welcomed with great enthusiasm by the devotees of each one. On the other hand, they were perceived by members of the greater martial arts community as an insult to their traditions. Little redshift aside here, isn't this very much the way it was when the germ theory of disease came out? All the doctors, all the famous, accomplished, educated doctors who believed in the four humors theory of disease, these guys were very offended and they thought this is stupid, and they were like, no, this is damaging, this is dangerous, this is stupid, we can't go along with this. And even if they recognized that it was true or whatever, they were like, no, we can't. There seems to be evidence, backing it up, but fuck that. We'll look like idiots, for having not realized the germ theory, so we can't accept this. We got to keep going with the four humors theory of disease. It's got to be right, and even if it's not, we'll look stupid if we accept this new theory. So they suppressed the germ theory of disease. I can't remember for how long, but it wasn't adopted nearly as quickly as it should have been. You see, and let me also agree with Wang Xiangzhai here when he's talking about this is a bad thing, the secrecy and passing all the secrets down to only one guy and all this kind of thing. I agree. This is a bad idea because what if Guo Yunshen? Remember, he taught many students. It sounds like, but his lineage holder was his son, and then his son dies, and then only because he had a nephew, and only because Guo Yunshen happened to live several more years, was he able to teach Wang Xiangzhai. What if Guo Yunshen had died shortly after his son and died of old age, right? Like, what if he had died at 70 years old instead of 75 or 78 or whenever it was that he died? You know what I mean? Then Wang Xiangzhai would have learned nothing from his uncle because his uncle would have been dead before he ever got the chance to learn. And then who would have passed on? Who would have learned and really become the master of Guo Yunshel's standing meditation skills and the explosive power that they generated? You see what I'm saying? Like, when it's very much like what I was talking about in that video when I was talking about how like redundancy, like I think I called it, biological raid. That's what I called that video. Where I was talking about if you clone people, then even if one of the clones dies, you still have the other guy left. And if you clone a bunch of them, you can't even murder them all. You know what I mean? Even if you want to. And plus, then they can all breed with different people. You know what I mean? Like, it's better to have redundancy. Because of cloning, it's better to have redundancy by way of teaching as many people as many secrets as you can and holding nothing back so that, you may think that, like, it's better to have one lineage holder, but no, that just means that that lineage holder ends up dying for some reason, totally unforeseeably, then all the secrets are lost. And that's no good. You should teach secrets to as many people as possible so that at least one of them masters it. And then he teaches a bunch of people, and then, preferably a few people master it, and then those people all teach a bunch of people, and a few people master the secrets from each of those people, and then the amount of people who are true masters gets bigger and bigger and bigger, instead of the amount of people who are masters dying out because of only passing it down, one person to his son or one person to a lineage holder who could, die, and the secrets are lost. Redundancy is a really important thing. And you can have redundancy by holding nothing back and teaching as widely as possible and stuff like that. And you can also have redundancy through cloning. You can have redundancy in many, many ways. And the more redundancy you have for good things, the better it is, right? So, like I was saying, his writings became extremely controversial, not just because of what he's saying, but also because of the brusqueness with which he said it. He was very outspoken. He didn't really mince words. He wasn't, worried about being super tactful, even though he wasn't rude. I guess he's kind of like me in that way. Like, I don't try to be offensive. I try to be tactful, but I end up offending people anyway because, I just tell it how it is. Or at least how I think it is. Not with bias, but, So it says here, this is considered an insult to many traditions, right? That he was saying the kind of things he was saying. This is only to be expected, of course, for like in any other field of knowledge, a great discovery cannot avoid conflict with the forces of conservatism and tradition. To add fuel to the fire, Wang Xiangzhai issued a standing invitation in the newspaper to all martial artists to come and join him in discussion and or competition, setting aside every Sunday afternoon for this purpose. Predictably, he was taken up on his offer by numerous practitioners from every conceivable martial arts discipline, and an unending stream of contestants knocked on Mr. Wang Xiangzai's door to investigate the principles of each one and experience the truth of it at the hands of the master. One of these is worth recounting, as it shows the extraordinary degree of control that Wang Xiangzai had developed in his art. There was a very prominent Xing Yichuan master by the name of Hong Lian Shun, who was very big and strong. His famous act was to take a little brick from the little brick from the Great Wall and smash it to powder using only a single palm. Wang Xiangzai accepted his challenge with a smile, and when Hong Lian Shun, using all his power, tried to chop Wang Xiangzai, he merely raised his arm and, discharging only slightly, threw Hong Lian Shun just so that he landed on the sofa. Hong Lian Shun couldn't believe what had happened, so Wang Xiangzai said, "Come up and try it again. This time I'll have you sit down in the same place again." Hong Lian Shun tried several more times, but no matter how hard he tried to evade and not land back on the sofa, every time he wound up sitting back on the sofa. He later told someone, quote, "I tried to land any place except the sofa." But Wang Xiangzai lifted his hand, went to the right and the left, and when he found the right place, discharged, and again I fell on the sofa. Unquote. Only one time did Wang Xiangzai misjudge slightly. He discharged using a little bit too much energy and threw Hung onto the sofa with so much force that its wooden frame shattered. So that was pretty funny and interesting. It does show what mastery he had, that he could even not just like easily defeat this other master, but like repulse him in the same place every single time, even though the guy was specifically trying not even to win anymore, just to get thrown anywhere but the sofa, but he just keeps getting thrown in the exact same place. I mean, that really, I think, shows what mastery, Wang Xiangzai had. I also run to read this part where it's talking about, it says, standing can be, that is standing meditation, Zhanzhuang, can be compared to the work of Zen. First you start with the precepts, then you cultivate wisdom, then you verify with the mind, and finally you achieve enlightenment in the void. Only when we have completed the work of understanding emptiness and the exploration of polarities can we practice the Tao. So in this respect, the work of Zen and the work of martial arts are the same. And that was from the book True Course of Each One by Wang Xiangzhai. And let's see here. Yeah, that was the part I wanted to read there. And then the next page I wanted to read is, let's see here. Yada, 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 yada. Yeah, okay. When you release your fist or hand, it will be as if releasing an arrow. When you use your strength, use it as if drawing silk, evenly, so as not to break it, while twisting your two hands as if pulling apart cotton. That's from the True Course of Each One as well. And then it says, your chi can be compared to gunpowder and your fist to the bullet. Then using your awareness just a little, it is as if you're pulling the trigger with it, and no flying bird can escape. That was also from the True Course of Each One. And by the way, he did use the terms chi and things like that in earlier years. But then later on, Wang Xiangzhai stopped using such terms. He didn't think they were as scientific. He didn't think they were as useful or clear enough in explaining things. So, that was one of his early books. So that's why he's talking about chi. And then it says in another quote, it says, self-defense means combat. It should be understood that in actual combat, moving violently is not as good as moving slightly, which again is not as good as not moving at all. It is stillness that is constant movement, just like a flywheel, which when turning extremely fast looks static. A visible movement is actually nothing but a reflection. Let's see here, sorry. Visible movement is nothing but a reflection of weakness. The motion that resides in stillness and looks like stillness is really powerful. Such motion and stillness are interdependent, each being the source of each other. Their magical application depends mainly on the control of the nervous system and the guidance of intention, the contraction and stretching of the joints and ligaments, as well as their firm support. The action and reaction of rotating movements, and the use of the elastic force produced in breathing. If all these can be properly used, the exerciser can be said to have laid a solid foundation for actual combat. And that was, I think, from the book Da Cheng Chuan. Da Cheng Chuan is another word for each one. Let's see here. Yada, yada, yada. Okay, what is said here is only something abstract. There are still things that cannot be described with words, but if one goes on practicing boxing with perseverance, and when they say boxing, they mean like martial arts. They don't mean Western boxing. That's something totally different. They can certainly be perceived in due course if they keep on practicing boxing. The difference between a violent motion and a slight one varies with the individual and depends on one's foundation, skill, and ability to perceive the mechanism of all forces. If one can perform movements and show mechanical skills everywhere, one can move either slightly or violently, or neither slightly nor violently. If one doesn't possess any mechanical skill, movements of whatever kind are of no avail. The same is also true of the difference between exerting force and not exerting force. The strength of ordinary people comes from quickened blood circulation only, and such strength is always rigid, divergent, and harmful to health. The strength that doesn't stem from quickened blood circulation is the natural instinctive strength. Such strength will come into play when needed without effort. Other delicate points, such as substantiality and insubstantiality, are simply beyond words, and I would not touch this subject here. All in all, Da Cheng Chuan is not judged by its mere form, but by the reaction of the mind. All that is visible and tangible is nevertheless elusive. Only when one reaches the realm of freedom and spontaneity will one's skills become really miraculous and formidable. And that was also from the book Da Cheng Chuan. This is also radical criticisms. Here it's got a little, about 2/3 of a page on Xingyi Chuan, 2/3 of a page on Taiji, and 2/3 of a page on Bagua Zhang. First, he's going to talk about Xingyi Chuan here. He says, it must be noted that Xingyi Chuan in its orthodox form had no such stuff as the 12 form exercises, though there should be 12 forms of the body. Nor did it have the theory of mutual production and restraint of the 5 elements. The 5 elements are only 5 terms representing 5 forms of force, not methods or routines of shadow boxing. I still remember instructions given by my late masters about the 5 elements: metal, wood, water, fire, and earth. Metal refers to the strength in bones and muscle, which is hard as diamonds and can sever gold or iron. Wood refers to the force whose range of action is compared to the supporting shape of a tree. Water refers to the force that is like surging ocean and dragons swimming in the sea, penetrating everywhere. fire refers to the force which, like gunpowder, explodes and burns with a mere touch of the hand. Earth refers to the solid, heavy composite force which seems to have been produced by the joint action of the heaven and the earth. And then it says, this is what is called 5 elements combining into one. Not the stuff of one form of boxing overcoming another form of boxing, as some people are preaching nowadays. If one observes first and thinks twice in actual fighting, it's almost certain that he will be defeated long before he takes any action at all. And that's from Da Ching Chuan as well, the book. Then his criticism of Taiji Chuan goes, among disciples by direct line of Taiji Chuan, I think the most outstanding master hands are the Yang brothers, Yang Xiaohu and Yang Chengfu. As an intimate friend of theirs, I know there is indeed some genuine knowledge of mechanics in Taiji Chuan. However, out of 100 practitioners, less than one really knows its real essence. Even if one may happen to know some of it, he cannot have a thorough understanding of the whole, because the basic way of perceiving the skill has long been lost, and therefore there is no mechanism of force to speak of in his legwork and footwork. The boxing in question, in its original form, had only 3 movements, and was thus called Lao San Dao, Old 3 Cuts. It was changed by Mr. Wang Xiangzhai and increased to 13 forms, which was further abused to as many as 150 forms. That is one of the main reasons why this boxing has lost its quintessence. That is Taiji Chuan. If it is practiced for the purpose of preserving one's health, it will only restrain one's spirit and energy and bring discomfort to the practitioner. If practiced for actual combat, it will only do harm to the limbs. In other functions, its other functions, if any, are nothing more than idling away the practitioner's time and confusing his mind. As to its method of practice, characterized by disoriented blows of the fist on the palms or kicks of foot and leg, I must say it is really ridiculous. In confrontation with the master hand, such a practitioner of Taiji Chuan is sure to fail. Even its master hand, I am afraid, can do nothing with a quite commonplace adversary so long as the latter is not very clumsy. In short, this boxing has been abused to such an extent that it might one day become a mere rigid form like a chess manual. And it has become that. In the past 20 years, most practitioners of Taiji Chuan have not been aware of its falseness. Even if someone is clear-headed, he does not know what he should actually do. As to ordinary learners, most of them believe in what is heard without using their own eyes. Thus Taiji Chuan is in fact being pushed toward its graveyard. What a great loss. I sincerely hope those competent followers of that boxing will straighten it out and make it systematic with a view to developing it to the future. Here I have taken the liberty of making comments on Taiji Chuan, and I don't know whether my comments are appropriate. Pardon me if I am too outspoken. I think one day those learners of Taiji Chuan have really gained something would agree with me in this regard. And this is from the book Da Ching Chuan. Oh, and by the way, Taiji Chuan is kind of proof of what Wang Xiangzhai was saying about how, Chinese martial arts have been going toward their graveyard because of this, strict lineage transmission and only teaching the secret to one person and secrecy and all this kind of stuff. Like, this whole thing has really declined the martial arts. He said that, as I read before, but proof of this is Taiji Chuan itself. Like, early, either in this book or in the other book by Yan Deeper Sloot, he talks about how it was a very closely guarded secret in Yang-style Taiji Chuan that the standing stake meditation, or in the Wu Ji posture, was used. And I think, I could be wrong, but I think the Wu Ji posture is when it's like the standing stake with the, like, holding the ball in front of you, and that, like, your feet are, side by side, just like standing normally, but the feet are further width apart, they're shoulder width apart, but instead of your hands being in a ball, either in front of your chest or right in front of your stomach, your hands are kind of like at your sides, but your wrists are tilted a little bit forward, and your elbows are bent a little bit as well, but not much. I think that's the Wuji posture. I could be wrong, but whatever the Wuji posture is, whether it's the holding the ball posture or that posture I was just describing, it's that Wuji posture was one of the great secrets of Yang-style Taiji Chuan that was revealed to very few people, and was very rarely demonstrated or whatever. But like, I think it was Yang Chengfu did practice that. He would practice standing in that posture for a long time, like, regularly, I guess, and that was one of the secrets of Taiji Chuan. So in that sense, Taiji Chuan, just like Liu He Bafa and Bagua Zhang and Xing Yi, practiced standing stake meditation as like one of their great secrets. So really, each one is just sort of like the bringing out into the open and the concentrating on the essence, the core of all those internal martial arts. It really is kind of like just a distillation of the 3 other internal martial arts, or 4 others, I should say. Xin Yichuan, aka Xing Yichuan, Taiji Chuan, Bagua Zhang, Liu He Ba Fa. So that's what he had to say about Taiji Chuan. And then he says about Bagua Zhang, Bagua, 8 trigrams, was formerly known as Chuanzhang, palm of Sichuan province. I once had an interview with Mr. Cheng Tinghua. When he was performing the feat, he was, as I recall, like a divine dragon, roaming, winding, and twisting in the sky. Such superb skills are really beyond the reach of us contemporaries. As to Master Dong Hai Chuan's boxing, it is even more difficult to have a true understanding of his skills. Mr. Liu Fengchun is a friend of mine. He has acquired remarkable skills, though his attainment is not so great as Master Dong. Even so, he is far superior to the practitioners to 64 palms or 72 kicks. I hope that those who practice Bagua will concentrate on single and double palm forms and try their best to perceive every movement. At the same time, they should make a penetrating study of the theory and put it into practice. And that was also from the book Da Cheng Chuan. And when he's talking about the single and double palm forms, I believe he's talking about the single and double palm change, as it's also called. I think that's what it's usually called. The single palm change and the double palm change. That's like, in Bagua, you're in this kind of stance, kind of like San Ti, with like one hand facing out and the other hand facing out, but like the hand that's facing further out is connected to the shoulder, which is further facing out, and like your torso is like tilted 45 degrees. The other's kind of in front of your stomach. It's lower and it's further back, and you kind of stay in that posture, and that's like the San Ti posture when you're left. Like, let's say you're left, I think it's usually your left, although you can do it either way, right or left, but usually it's your left side, which is forward. Your left foot is in front and facing forward, and your left hand is in front and higher, and your right foot is further back, and it's got most of the weight on it, and your right hand is kind of in front of your stomach facing out. And that's very similar to the single palm change, but except for in the single palm change, you walk like that. You walk like that instead of holding that posture, like the San Ti posture. Your hands are in the same position, but you're going around in a big circle, and your hands are always facing in toward the center of the circle. And then there's like a single palm change where you kind of like switch it, and then your right hand is facing the inside, and then you switch it, so now you're going around the other way. Like before, you're going counterclockwise around the circle, with your left hand facing toward the center of the circle. Then you do the palm change, and then you turn, and now your right hand is facing toward the center of the circle, and you're going around clockwise. So that's the single and double palm change. And people who would be practitioners of Bagua would just practice walking the circle for hours and hours. Like this one guy, supposedly, old master, I don't know how long ago it was, whether it's 100 years or 200 or 300 years ago, but the guy like walked around the circle so much that he like wore this deep groove into this circle that he was walking around this tree as his practice, because he did it for hours a day in the same exact spot for like, months or years on end or whatever, right? Under instruction of his master to do that. And this is like, that's one of the fundamental things of Bagua, the single and double palm change. So if you can master that, that's kind of like mastering grasping the bird's tail and or Zhangzhuang in the other arts. And so that can really make you a master as well if you practice that. At least, if you have people to practice sparring, like push hands or whatever with as well. So let's see here. Yeah, I think that was all I wanted to read in this video. And then I'm probably going to do another video where I read the interview or the talk. Yeah, I think most of it's an interview. I'm not sure, but most of it's about Sam Tam. He's another master, so I'm going to read those chapters, and that should be about a 40-minute video, I assume, if I don't give any commentary on it, because it's about 40 pages, and I think it takes about a minute to read each page. So yeah, that video will also be kind of long. Sorry these videos are so long. I really wish they were way shorter, but it is what it is, right? So yeah, hopefully somebody liked this video or found it interesting, and hopefully someone likes the Sam Tam video coming up. And after that, I think that'll be all the videos. That'll be the end of the videos that I'll be making based on these 2 books. This has been Redshift. Peace.